Hello, and thank you for joining us for Long Beach Symphony's Musically Speaking series, hosted by our music director, Eckart Preu. I'm Kelly Lucera, president of the Long Beach Symphony, and we are so excited to bring you this virtual series featuring interviews with world-class performers, conductors, and composers. Today, we are honored to welcome highly accomplished Sivan Silver and Silver-Garburg of the world-renowned Silver-Garburg Piano Duo. And now, please welcome to our virtual stage, all live from Berlin, Long Beach Symphony music director Eckart Preu and the talented pianists Sivan Silver and Silver-Garburg.
Thanks, Kelly, and welcome, Sivan and Gil. Thank you for joining us today.
Lovely to be here.
And actually, we are all in Berlin, actually, just at two different places. I'm at the airport and you are at home, obviously. We've worked frequently together in the past, both as a piano duo, but also as pianists to four hands with the Jerusalem Symphony in Spokane, in Stamford, also in Cincinnati. And we all are really looking forward to welcoming you to Long Beach, hopefully soon, hopefully in this next season. I'm really looking forward to it. It's always very special making music with you. And what I've heard from audiences that heard you play as a piano duo is that the admiration, how perfectly synchronized you play, which is kind of, I guess, it's like because you're so far away, you're like 15 feet away, you sit across from each other, you can't see each other's hands. How does that work, like playing as a piano duo? What is like the secret of being a successful piano duo?
Well, I can tell you a story. We played once in Mexico City, and it was, I think, some national hall, and the lights went out. So we are playing a Rachmaninoff suite and no light. We don't see anything. We don't see each other. We don't see our hands. And I think, well, if it doesn't come back in about 2.5 minutes, we can go on complete darkness, then it's a problem. But it did come back. Most of the information we get is just by listening. Actually, we don't really need to look. We do look. It's fun. Well, when you have someone pretty to look at. So it's even more fun, but basically it's mostly come from the music, from listening, and of course we play the pieces so many times at home that we are, even if there is acoustically, let's say, very blurred hall, which can happen, we already feel what is going to happen. So the great thing about playing a piano, you can say, is always that you know in advance what the other person will do. So when it happens, it's just, But
you don't know it as if it is planned. I mean, there is still a lot of place for spontaneity. It's just that you can anticipate how the sound will develop, basically. But then all the aspects of acoustics and even the audience in the hall, how they breathe and the sound and the time, it changes. So it's basically like walking together and you breathe along.
Right. Well, that's easier said than done, because I mean, I've known you for a while, probably like, I don't know, 15 years approximately, or maybe more. And I figured you have a lot of, you have very different personalities. And my question is, how do those different personalities, advance or hinder, particularly the rehearsal process? It's easy when you when you either have a conductor who rehearses an orchestra, or when you're a pianist by yourself and you know how you work best. But when you have two people who work potentially differently, how does that dynamic work in rehearsal?
Well, I mean, we really tried different models, and in different periods also we do different kinds of rehearsals. But basically what works the best, first we develop a piece, we go through a certain process together. So we start playing the piece in a very early stage. It's not that we come fully prepared in the sense that we know exactly how we want it to sound. Rather, we come with a sensation of the piece. We are both curious about it. Of course, we have ideas, because we wouldn't have played a piece if we didn't already had the inspiration that, oh, that must be excellent. But We really want to make the process together. And so I think when we start working, if it's a new piece, what works the best is that we enlarge our possibilities. So first, in music, there's so many different aspects, and all of them are beautiful and all of them are fascinating. But so eventually you have to inspire each other and show which elements for you, even if the other is attracted by another element. So let's say one will want to make the melody very continuous or flexible or give it some kind of a shaping. And the other is very obsessed about the beautiful harmonies and taking time to all the colors. And it's all fantastic. It's all beautiful. So we can inspire each other by just taking time to separate these elements and basically want to achieve them all. And what will happen with the time is that we can reduce and purify all this into more focused way that combines them all, and probably then have some hierarchies or how we combine. But this will happen as a solution of the two of us. So first we enlarged, and then we start getting a common path also.
Gil, so I know Gil.
Well, I think it's all about. I don't really believe in interpretation as such a thing. I think you can have any interpretation played wonderful, sometimes even very simple interpretations. You have some really great pianists to play simple interpretation, it's amazing, and you can have a very complicated and interesting interpretation and it still doesn't work. So eventually we have to go through a process that we really feel the piece together. And I think this is a much longer process than playing solo. And sometimes it's a painful process because we don't always see the same eye to eye. But eventually it can be really fantastic because, again, if you go through this process and you can really play together and really feel the music together, then you're like a god with four hands, like a Hindu god. So you become more than a pianist. And your mind is also built that you really feel, physically feel all the four hands, even the one you don't play.
So we start on the conscious level, and it turns eventually to the unconscious level. We know, we get the impressions of the music already unconsciously, and then that's how we get the freedom eventually in the concert.
I'm curious about the painful stuff. So, Gil, you said it's sometimes a painful process where you don't see eye to eye. Can you give us an example of what happened and how you resolved it?
Yes. Well, I think one of the most basic painful process, especially lately, I think, is that I prefer to play and Sivan wants to talk. So she wants to work and I just want to play.
I disagree. I want to work, not to talk, but to take the time for certain details.
And I feel I can do the process in my head while we just play. I don't think we need to talk anymore because I actually sort of know what's coming. So this is, it's just a technical thing. Eventually, I really don't think it matters what exactly is that you do. It just matters that you do it really fantastically. And that's
honestly, it has to become ours. That's the main thing. It can, be a different influence of each other, but eventually it must be our own. So something that we can sincerely play, not in an artificial way, because it's decided to do this or that. So that's, I think, the key to feel well also with each other.
Yeah, I'm so happy we talk about this. How would you, speaking of differences, I know you always meet in the middle, but how would you describe your individual musical sound, before you meet in the middle? I guess what I'm asking is this, do you play with a different sound concept as a pianist when you play solo versus when you play with each other?
Well, first, as a duo, I think we already have our sound, which is some kind of a solution, like a chemical solution of the two of us. It wouldn't work if we just combine the two of them and try to connect them, 1 + 1. Rather, it's really some kind of the sum of the two of us, and we developed a language or a sound or a style, you know, as every pianist might have his fingerprint on the piano in terms also of agogics and sounds. So we already have this, and I think it works very well for our duo that we are different, and we came out with something that works
new,
for us.
yeah.
It's not going necessarily to work for every couple of pianists.
So I think we are really obsessed about sound, actually. This is something we really work a lot, and the sound to make beautiful sound in piano duo is completely different than doing it by yourself, because the sound in piano, what we call the beautiful sound, is a sort of a mixture of balance, the relation between the voices, and the timing that you take. When you do it alone, it's all in your two hands, but when you do it with someone else, you have to really shape it together. And the sound we have in duo is different from each of the sounds we have separately. Most people say it's better. So we got, I think, the best of the two of us.
I mean, you asked about the differences between us, so maybe it would be stereotypic to really try to define it, but I think Gil has a very extremely warm and soft and velvety sound. Beautifully balanced always, and I like to add sometimes little sparkles or bigger dynamic waves, and it's a little bit different sometimes to play a little bit more articulated perhaps. So the combination of this, when it works together, can create actually something very beautiful, but of course it has to work together as the time that it needs. I mean, you cannot separate actually sound or balance from different elements. It's always also connected to the time you take. You know, if you have a chord which is more direct, you will use different timing than if you get softly into the chord, obviously. And that's just a small example of it. So there are differences, but I think we are happy with what we've got together.
Is there one of you who always plays on top and one on the bottom, or do you like to switch it up, even the same piece, or how does that work? Do you throw the coin and see who plays?
Maybe there are listeners now, the people here that listen to our talk, and I just wonder if you think if we sit at one piano with four hands on the same keyboard, if you can imagine what would be the way, and if you can imagine both ways, and if so, why? So I can say that by four hands on one keyboard, I'm always at the right, so that's the primo, so that is the more the soprano part, and you can imagine why, but if not, then we can tell you.
Well, we started like that because if I would play on the top, no one would see Sivan. I'm 30 centimeters longer. So when we play four hands, it's always the same. And I think also by now, if we switched, it could be fantastic. I think it would be actually, after so many years, interesting to try, but it would be a new pianist. Right. It would be different sound. It will be just a new musical entity. It wouldn't be the same. It doesn't matter. It's assumed people. If you switch the layers, it's just not the same.
But that's of course only four hands, because when we play two pianos,
in two pianos we switch. We have concerti or two piano pieces where each of us plays the first. But two pianos is much more like a conversation. So you have two pianos that basically converse with each other most of the time. Of course, they also become one, but if you talk Mozart concerto, it's really a conversation. It's a back and forth, while four hands is becoming one. There are not so many four hands concerti with orchestra, but we did one, the Brahms concerto. And next week we're doing Musikverein, and next month we're doing Musikverein Czerny concerto.
One piano four hands.
One piano four hands, yeah. But all the others, almost everything else.
But really, as for our roles, we do like to change it, but in a certain piece, we just try sometimes to see what happens, but not in a way of performance.
Right. think it makes total sense that if you guys switch, if Gil plays the top, everything will change, and that makes total sense. I'm wondering, I mean, you both have you play to four hands, you play as a piano duo, but you also have independent career as soloists. How do you balance the sense of competition, or is there a sense of competition? How do you support each other? How do you critique each other? Do you play for each other before you play a solo piece? And Gil says, Sivan, listen to this, or do you kind of stay away from that and say, hey, it's my gig, it's my responsibility? How does that, being a couple at home and also being a couple with a duo piano, how does that bleed over or not into your solo careers?
Well, I think we really, what we do is we play piano duo. So that's what we've been interested in doing most of the time. And we do play solo, mostly concerto with orchestras. We started actually doing that more in recent years from the simple fact that our son got into school. And of course, when one parent is away, then the other can be with him. And if both of our way, that's always,
yeah, but we've been trained and of course started our careers as soloists, and
so we've shared actually, because of you, we've shared the Beethoven concerto cycle, which we did actually in recent years like 30 times, and now I do Mozart cycle, the complete thing. I don't think we have any competitions, right?
Well, actually, the last time we really practically had to compete each other was when we've been at high school. So we've been together at high school, but not as a couple. So not competing each other or even raising this question wasn't an issue. And there was an audition to choose a pianist soloist with the orchestra. And luckily, they were looking for two soloists, and we were both chosen, playing the actual same concerto, but in different concerts. So in this, we don't have bad feelings towards each other. I don't think we would have, even if it would be different. And later on, this question was raised really in the beginning of our relationship. And then when we sort of going to the same international competitions, for instance, as soloists, we decided it's probably not a good idea, but we still wanted to travel together. So Gil went there as a soloist, and I went in a different category, which was there as a piano duo with Gil. And also we won both, so it was a good thing, and we could still be happy both in the personal way, traveling together, and then also with later on playing the concerts. But then really, I think that, we are also a couple, and what can you want more than anyhow have the success of each other in any sense, and definitely not as pianists we are together. So I don't think ever we felt any kind of enviness.
Of course, when we play concerto, it's really, when we play solo concerto or orchestra, it's really handy when you have someone to practice for you the orchestra part. Mm-hmm. And last week we had a recording with two violinists, and then I call Sivan, please come to the room. I play, and please play for me the violin part once, that I know if I need to change anything, but that's all. I mean, it's really, I think.
Yeah, we normally also don't interfere with each other's work, but sometimes it can happen that I think, hey, well, what did you do there? Why is this like this? And then, but it's very, very local things. But basically, when we hear each other, it makes me happy to hear Gil play solo, and I guess the opposite, just because we have some beautiful music at home, which is still live played and not by us, because, normally, we are those that have to sit on the piano.
I think with me it's the opposite. When Sivan plays a concerto, always a week before, 2 weeks before, she comes out of the room and says, it's terrible, nothing works.
No, this was 20 years ago, not anymore.
It sounds great, what's the problem?
That was 20 years ago, I think, when I was
there
really
was always
young.
One day you did
that. This is a question for Gil, because I know he told me about it. What is physically more demanding, playing to four hands or playing to piano music?
Four hands is much more demanding, actually, because you sit wrong, especially me, because I'm doing the pedal. I can show you actually. These are our pianos. And when you sit on four hands, can you see me?
Yes.
Then I sit here, and the piano, the pedal is in the middle. I sit on the side, and then I have to go. So all my back is sort of is wrong. Nothing is. It's not like when you sit solo. It's very nice. It's very comfortable. So you turn out doing like this, and it can be very, very difficult just to hold the position. And also all the balance is both for Sivan and me, it's sort of different than solo. So you have to control much more elements. So playing four hands is definitely, I think, more taxing. We noticed that now when we did the Brahms concerto with you, and then we did it later. And because you have to, when you play with orchestra, you use a very different sound dimension. It has to be very big. So after you get to the 4/5 concert with rehearsal and everything, you start to feel this shoulder here. It doesn't really sit right anymore. And in solo, you can go on forever. It will never, it always feel great, So
yeah,
I think,
I mean, saying that depends also, of course, what is difficult, because you talk about the stamina for a long time, like performing maybe evening after evening in a big hall, and even to have a big sound or whatever. So it's the amount of energy and the position of the body, but of course, also the smaller things. Basically, people have the image that probably the repertoire for two pianos is more virtuosic, and it might have also some truth in it by definition of the genre. But actually, in four hands, there are some pieces which are very, very brilliant, virtuosic, and full of textures, inner textures. And very often, what is also demanding is that the left hand, for instance, for me, or by Gil, also the relations of the left and right hands are not as in solo playing. So it could be that the main melody where I need more, either sound or brilliance or flexibility, which is also something physically that sometimes you need to feel it, would be in my left hand. Whereas as pianists, we are used to have certain roles for the right and certain for the left. And also with Gil, I mean, the coordination of the two hands might be very difficult, and not to mention also some physical positions that very often, I mean, you cannot see now here, but we have to play in certain angles just because the other hand is coming. So not to talk, sometimes it's really crossed, but very often we have to come from above, from below, from the right or from the left.
That's okay, that's learnable. I always find
it's learnable, but it's not the most natural way, which is just comfortable for the body. So
you cannot go with the elbow.
Oh, the elbow, yeah. So yeah, in four hands you have this aspect that in two pianos you simply have your own piano. So I guess for professional pianists, playing two pianos is much more natural, similar to the position that they have their own instrument.
Right. That makes sense. I seem to remember that long time ago, you told me that you both know pretty much every piece that was ever written for piano to four hands or for two pianos. And I'm not sure if I got that right. And if so,
maybe you remember that you said that there is so much, and we always
it's impossible.
It's probably impossible.
What are some of the pieces?
Maybe we refer to the concerti.
Yes.
That's
we played all the concerti. Yes,
right.
That's true. But not there are
not
so
all
many.
As for also lately.
That would be impossible.
I think it's safe to assume that a lot of us don't really know much about the repertoire, for neither four-hand piano nor piano to four hands. So in preparation for your appearance in Long Beach, what would you recommend our audiences, like pieces that they absolutely have to know, like for two pianos, for instance, or four hands, because it's great stuff.
So I think four hands, the first piece that everyone have to know is the Schubert Fantasy. That's I think you cannot really go around that. Schubert Fantasy in F minor. It's an amazing piece. It's also structurally one of the most significant pieces written in the music history. And besides that, it's absolutely fantastic. But actually, Schubert also wrote a lot of other wonderful pieces that are almost all of them are amazing, and it's about 8 hours if you want to listen to the whole cycle. We actually sit down and record it slowly these years. There is a lot of beautiful works by Brahms. Mozart, of course, wrote both four hands and two pianos, concerti, sonatas, four hands, sonatas for two pianos. Liszt, there is quite a lot, and then there is Debussy, Ravel, Rachmaninoff.
Yeah, I mean, how?
Yeah. So it's and of course Bach with the wonderful concerti.
I mean, maybe in the end we can try to create some kind of a playlist, but it really must be a list. I mean,
So
really
if you look only on concerti, actually there are more concerti for two pianos and orchestra than any concerto of any other instrument besides piano and violin. So more than cello, more than clarinet, it's really very extensive. So we are very lucky. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we're going to pick you up on that idea of creating a playlist, because that would be really interesting, I think, for a lot of people. For now, thank you. Let me pass it over to Kelly, who will lead the Q&A.
That will be fascinating. Thank you, Eckart. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for allowing us to be part of such an interesting conversation. I so enjoy watching the two of you talk back and forth. I can't wait to actually see you live performing. To our audience, feel free to submit any questions in the Q&A box. And we do have some questions already. Leslie would like to know, what special challenges do you face coaching piano duos versus individual artists?
Mm-hmm. So I think teaching piano duo is often much more, you start from a different place. When you have a solo pianist, he's already pretty much into his idea about sound, about how to create it. And you have really beautiful piano duos or excellent pianists. And they come, they want to play together, and they don't really know how to make it sound. Sorry. Like not COVID, like one person. So when we start the first lesson with pianists, also pianists who are technically excellent, many times we sit down and we do even just chords.
You mean for the duos?
Yes,
when they play?
Not that we tell them what to do, but they have to open their ears and their hands to the possibility that this is possible to do. So it starts from a very different place, and then many times they get it quite fast once they go in this path, and they are very happy that they can do those things. So I think this is a very big difference. It's a completely different way.
So in a way, you have to learn new tools, and then sometimes even a new language, and also the way you reach there, even though as individual pianists, students might be already very nice musicians, but sometimes you have to look from a different angle and start a new learning element.
So usually when we start teaching, we will have lessons of 3 hours, because the lesson also, we really want them to work towards something in the lesson. So the lesson is a kind of half rehearsal, half lesson. So we want to see that they really achieve an ideal that they're looking. And many times the way we start, they play a phrase, it's not quite, not really there. It's not really beautiful shaped together. And then we ask one of them, just play the melody, then play the melody with the bass. And now you have wonderful melody. Why don't you do it together? Then let's try to find it together. So we let them actually, we don't tell them which ideal they should have, but we try to give them the instruments to find the ideal that they not always can find.
Interesting. Okay, it's a great process. Marcia would like to know, for all three of you, for the 2021 season Long Beach Symphony programmed Bach's Concerto for two keyboards in C minor, why is that piece significant to you?
Well, I think Bach wrote us 3 concerti, and they are all really wonderful. It's every time we play Bach, I become especially happy. It is the absolutely fantastic music, greatest music there is. It's also physically so pleasurable to play. And then when you do it with the orchestra, it's even more fun because you really can converse. You converse with each other, you converse with the orchestra. It's like, you know, sitting in a party. So it's completely inspiring. So it's absolutely one of my favorite pieces to play.
And of course, I mean, you know, Bach playing polyphonic works, works with many instruments, can work so nicely with having the strings around and two pianos coming from different sections. So you can say, in a sense, that's the beginning. There was still no four-hands works, for instance, in the Baroque, but playing on two keyboards or two instruments can get so many colors and so many different patterns of the way the voices are combined. So in addition to just the music, which is always inspirational. I mean, if it's with this lovely energy of the fast movements, which, you know, always lift your spirit. And if it's the second movement, which is one of the beautiful, most beautiful, you know, arias with many layers, and each voice that you listen to, from the basses moving and to the inner patterns, you can have this as enough to enjoy the beauty, and the combination of all of this is simply enjoyable.
Absolutely.
So with many, many layers together, and it works so beautifully
Yeah.
with this combination of two pianos and orchestra.
And Eckart?
Yeah, I mean, what I like about concertos for two pianos is, you know, you have two pianos, you have already at least four lines going on. What is the role of the orchestra? You know, what uses the orchestra really when you have already two pianos? And what colors can we add? What rhythm can we add? And it's very different if you have a Mozart concerto for two pianos or a Bach or Poulenc or so. It's really fascinating. But what I like about, actually in particular, the Bach ones or so, is it's like, I think it humanizes Bach, because I see him like playing the piano with one of his sons or so, you know? I mean, he's not this individual that is just playing by himself, you know, centuries ago, but he's actually this human being who is a dad and who plays with his sons, or maybe his sons play together. So, but it's like more like a family together. And I find, you know, the idea of that really humanizing the music.
And Karen would like to know, have you played any arrangements or transcriptions by Morley and Gerhardt?
No, I'm afraid
No,
not.
I'm afraid not, but it would be interesting
We're
to check
always
them out.
open to listen. Yes.
John is asking, you spend so much time practicing and performing. What is your favorite genre of music to just sit back and relax to? That's for all three.
You mean if you talk generally, we basically listen only to classical music. You know, we are in Berlin, so it's a city with a huge cultural, musical choice. I must say that after you sit down and you practice for 5-6 hours, it's not really something you want to do. Usually our life are so hectic that there is absolutely no time for that. But we like music. I mean, music is, when it's good, it's fantastic.
So yeah, so in a sense, perhaps unlike some people who still love music but don't do it professionally, we cannot just put music, so to say, in the background as an ambience. It just wouldn't work. We will immediately just want to listen to it, and it has to be an activity that we do, actually sitting and listening to a complete piece, probably. And so therefore, I mean, we could have listened to different genres, but I believe that actually all genres of music are connected and are based on the same principles. But if we already want to go into this journey, listening to any piece it could be, we normally would take a classical work just because it has the same tools, but normally the storyline would be longer. You know, it will be like reading a novel compared to, well, actually you can read, of course, a poem. It can be, you know, like a very little lead or something. But I think it's the same language, only that we choose what we listen to, not just as a good feel, rather really as a meaningful process experience.
And Eckart, what do you like to listen to?
Oh, I don't listen to music. No, I think, yeah, if you do it as a profession, I cannot have music in the background. I start listening to it, and so for me it doesn't work. I have to put my mind to it, otherwise I'm getting antsy. And all, as I think it was Sivan said, or no, Nagil, it's like, if you do it for 5 hours a day, I think you need a break. So I love silence. Silence is my favorite sound, actually.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we come to a restaurant and there is some music played, normally
We always try to switch it off.
yeah, if it's possible to just with music.
And our last question is from Stephen. He asks where you all got your training and who are your most influential teachers?
So we studied in Israel and then in Germany, in Hanover, and we studied actually with Aryeh Bardi, who is today one of the most, I think, famous teachers. And I think we only had one teacher in this sense as an adult. And then we continued as a duo, and I must say that I learned from Sivan a lot. I think I learned from Sivan more than any other teacher. So I think we were going on teaching each other. And I think this is something you see a lot of times, like the Odessa school in violin. Suddenly out of Odessa, this city, in Ukraine, comes out one after the other, Huberman and Hefet, and all this huge violinists, one after the other. And many times it's the teacher is very important. The teacher can give you a lot, but it's also the students teach each other. So once there is a sort of a momentum, and I see that also with my students, if I show them something and they say, yeah, you can also do it. I say, no, but it's you. It doesn't mean we can do it. But if their friends in the class do it, immediately everyone sit down and try to practice until they can do the same. So we learn a lot from the teachers. We learn also from the students, I think. And I think we learn from each other. So, today when I listen to one of my favorite musicians, doesn't even have to be a pianist. I actually can sit down and understand what he does and learn from it and try it also.
Yeah, but of course we still got, we had wonderful teachers as children, each one is on in Israel. And later on in Tel Aviv at the Music Academy, we both studied with Professor Aryeh Bardi, and we moved to study in Hanover with the same teacher. So in this sense, in our adult life, we had the one teacher. So you go on and study all the time. I still study. So.
And Eckart? Training
Sorry, what was the question again? Sorry.
Where were you trained, and who were your influential teachers? Who were your influential teachers?
Well, it was actually very similar, because I basically consider one of my only one of my teachers my real teacher. His name is Gunter Kahlet. He's in Weimar. He still teaches. He was just a wonderful teacher, and I learned most of it from him in terms of technique. You have to listen, you have to observe, and you learn so much in rehearsal. And we always had group lessons. So there was never an individual conducting lesson. It was always in group lessons. And looking and playing for each other is exactly as Gil said, that is the best way to learn, because I'm not going to make that mistake that he just made. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And so you kind of pick up on these things. And so, but I'm forever grateful for all the influences and all the different conductors that I was able to see, but mostly from my main teacher, Gunter Kahlet.
I would imagine that for conductor, it's even a later phase than for us, because we can sit on the piano. If you have a good piano, that you can basically find it, and then you just have to be able to understand what's the difference in the concert hall. But the conductor actually can only learn when he has an orchestra. Some things, a lot actually. You can only learn in live. So until you don't get your first job and you don't really sit down and do something, it's like learning to swim on the shore. It doesn't really you can learn only that much. And after that, you have to, to jump into the water and try.
Right. A conductor's life is built on failure, and on very public failure, because you make your mistakes very much in public and everybody overlooks it once, but only once.
Yeah.
Well, that was the last question we have time for today. And thank you to our audience for your great questions and for tuning into Musically Speaking. We look forward to bringing you our next program in a couple of weeks, featuring beloved Long Beach Symphony Pop's guest conductor, Matt Kattengub. And thank you so much to Eckart, Sivan, and Gil, all live from Berlin, for allowing us to be part of this discussion today. We really enjoyed learning more about you, and we look forward to welcoming you all on stage with the Long Beach Symphony very soon.
We look forward to it. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Be well.